Caribbean. Mrs. Alison McLean, representative at the UN Women Multi-Country Office in Caribbean. Ms. Monica LeBenet, Vice President of Operations, the Caribbean Development Bank. Pamela Coke-Hamilton, Executive Director of the Caribbean Export Development Agency. Other representatives of the Diplomatic Corps, representatives from the CARIFORUM business organizations, private sector representatives, especially the female business owners that we have here today, members of the media, and those also participating virtually online. We are streaming via our Facebook and YouTube page. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the launch of the Women Empowered Through Export program. We export. It's really wonderful to have you all here with us today to mark this occasion. It's been a long time planning for the agency. As you all know, I like to kind of get straight on with things. So I would like to invite our Executive Director, Pamela Coke-Hamilton, to officially welcome you all and give her remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for turning out this morning. I was telling my family on WhatsApp this morning that I feel like a walking rose bush. But, but you know, I'm a tomboy at heart, so I keep kind of hitting this thing and wondering why it's here. But apparently it's supposed to be stylish, so I'm working with it this morning. Senator, the Honorable Maxine McLean, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, thank you very much for joining us. Mrs. Cecile Humphrey, Chair of our board, Her Excellency Ambassador Daniela Tramacere, Head of Delegation of the European Union, the Eastern Caribbean States, the OECS, and CARICOM CARIFORUM, and of course the EU is our single largest donor and supporter. Mrs. Patricia Francis, Chair of the Trade Facilitation Task Force of the Government of Jamaica, for me, former Executive Director of International Trade Center, one of the founders of what was She Trades for ITC, and also head of JAMPRO, and of course, advocate for women's empowerment. Mrs. Janet Douglas, CMG, British High Commissioner to Barbados and Eastern Caribbean. Can I just say Eastern Caribbean instead of all six? Thank you. Mr. Georges Lemieux, Counselor in the High Commission of Canada to Barbados. Ambassador Legault was unable to make it. Linda Tagliatella, U.S. Ambassador to Barbados and Eastern Caribbean, other representatives of the Diplomatic Corps, representatives of CARIFORUM agencies and business support organizations, private sector representatives. I see Nisha. Who else do I see? I see Donna, quite a few powerful women in there. Hello, how are you? Thank you very much for being here today. This is something that we've been working on for over a year, and we're very happy to get to this point where we can actually launch it. So today we are launching our latest initiative, the Women Empowered Through Export, We Export program. This launch comes at an opportune time, as tomorrow across the globe, International Women's Day will be celebrated to mark the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women, and to continue the advocacy for women's equality across the globe. Caribbean Export has supported and driven local and regional private sector development for the past 22 years. From our experience, we have come to understand the myriad complex of challenges that companies, in particular those owned by women, face. Given our experience and literature on women entrepreneurs in the Caribbean, we thought it was only fitting to develop a special program to address the challenges that many of them face. A study by the Women's Entrepreneurial Venture Scope, funded by the Multilateral Investment Fund of the IDB, reveals that many Caribbean countries ranked at the bottom of the list for best places for female entrepreneurs to do business. Access to finance and women's business skills capacity are identified among the reasons for the low rankings. Ironically, this is in a region that boasts 3 countries in the top 10 of female managers in the world: Jamaica, St. Lucia, and the Bahamas. So we need to understand why that has occurred and what is causing that. Similarly, a study by InfoDev, profiling Caribbean women entrepreneurs, draws attention to the state of women-owned businesses in the Caribbean. The study shows that these businesses have little to no employees, are concentrated in low-growth sectors, have difficulty accessing finance. Other challenges are their lack of self-confidence and women's fear of failure in their businesses. Women also struggle with work-life balance because many are primary caregivers. And of course, in the Caribbean, that is multiplied by a factor of about 5, because we all know how the work balance thing goes in the Caribbean. So that is a major factor that continues to play out in the region. Based on this state of play, we know that a program had to be created to address these critical issues in support of women entrepreneurs. We Export focuses on 4 priority pillars. 1, increasing access to finance. 2, providing access to markets and networks. 3, capacity building through training and business coaching. And 4, advocacy campaigns to address constraints affecting women business owners. Later this morning, I will share further details on the We Export program and what you can expect from this exciting program for female business owners. At this time, I'd like to recognize our partners, as we believe the power of collaboration, especially for a program of this nature, is critical. The European Union, our major supporter and a strategic partner in development cooperation, and without whose funding provided under the 11th EDF, we would be unable to implement this timely program. I'd also like to recognize the Caribbean Development Bank, with whom we have signed a financing agreement to implement 2 strategic activities under the Access to Finance pillar, and the UN Women, with whom we will be working closely and signing an MOU today to further strengthen women in business. I will close with the words of Oprah Winfrey, whom we all know as a successful business billionaire, happens also to be a woman and a woman of color. Step out of the history that is holding you back. Step into the new story you are willing to create. I also wanted to say at this juncture, it would be, I think, remiss of me to fail to mention what's happening across the world in terms of the #MeToo movement. I know in the Caribbean we tend to pretend that things aren't always what they are. And the reality is that in the Caribbean, the Me Too movement would probably be Me Too times 10. And we know it's a reality. And I think every single woman in this room has walked that road and probably is still walking that road in some sense or another. And at some point, it will begin to play itself out in our region. And I think we stand a good chance of being on the cusp of enabling women to stand stronger, to be better. And the men in the room who are feminists, Ian, Cleveland, you know, I'm seeing you all. Good. The feminist men in the room who will be driving that agenda along with us, we look forward to you supporting us as we move forward. So we certainly hope that We Export will be a safe space where women in business can learn, be challenged, make mistakes, and grow and celebrate their successes. We hope that participants in this program will create a new story for themselves, their businesses, their children, their wider communities, and a story that they would be proud of. We know that you have the potential to take your companies to the next level, and with the right type of support, we hope we can help to take you there. So we're calling all female entrepreneurs in the CARIFORUM region to go to our website, www.carib-export.com, and apply for this program. This is your time. Don't lose this opportunity. It will be an excellent opportunity to grow, connect with others, and make your mark in our region and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your presence and attention this morning.
Thank you very much, Ms. Coke-Hamilton. As you guys would see in the room, we do actually have a few of Barbados's female entrepreneurs here with us today. We have three different female-owned businesses that are displaying their products. Imora, otherwise also known as Spa Essentials, they are going through a rebranding at the moment as Imora. We also have O's, which produce gluten-free products used in cooking, such as sweet potato flours and so forth. And we also have Barbadiana, which is a collection of different producers, from female producers actually, and they have a store in Sky Mall, if you haven't been there before. So I will let you know there are some prizes to be given today, so I do hope you're paying attention because I am going to ask you a few questions, all right? But next I would like to invite Her Excellency Ambassador Tramachere to give her opening remarks. Ambassador Daniela Tramachere, Head of Delegation to the European Union, of the European Union to Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean states.
Oops. Right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I like the joke about the walking rose. I can't say the same. I would like to cut protocol very short just to acknowledge the presence of the Minister, Mrs. McLean. Thank you for coming, and the colleagues from the Diplomatic Corps and from the UN and from CDB, and all the ladies here, and our key speaker, of course, from Jamaica, and all the ladies and gentlemen who came over for this, for us, very important event. So good morning, everybody, again. It is obvious, and I'm really pleased, I'm so honored and gratified to attend this initiative. We have been pampering it, and here we are. Caribbean Export has been a partner for a long time. We treasure them, we pamper them as well, but they sort of pay us back with their hard work. So, and this initiative in support of women entrepreneurs in the Caribbean is really, really what we were waiting for. It's not by chance that we are launching it today, of course, close to the 8th of March. For decades, Caribbean women have distinguished themselves in every area of endeavor, both locally and internationally, and not to mention all those renowned personalities who are presently international celebrities in the sports and artistic scene. Have taken off the names, but we all know whom I'm referring to, especially in Barbados. But these are just, tip of the iceberg. There are many more examples that are in the making, and I'm sure will shine very soon. These women I was referring to are not just artists and athletes in their own right, but also business women and ambassadors of their respective brands. And there is a lesson to be learned here. These women and others follow the path blazed by all the generations of Caribbean women entrepreneurs, such as Rose Leon, a Jamaican chemist, some of you may know, who pioneered a line of locally manufactured beauty products. So is the pioneer of something that we are seeing also today here. Sandra Cooper, for example, manufacturer and proprietor of Cooper Garments in Barbados. Joyce Destang, hotelier and co-owner of Bay Gardens Resort in St. Lucia. Just to mention a few names, there are many more. These are just examples of successful Caribbean women who are not isolated instances of success. For example, in Jamaica and St. Lucia are now ranked #1 and #2, respectively, out of 108 countries where women make up more than 50% of managerial pool, 50, in both the public and the private sectors. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have the largest number of firms in the developing world with a female as a top manager. In addition, the Dominican Republic has a gender pay gap of less than 20%, which is no small business to talk about. In this regard, it seems that the Dominican Republic is on par with Norway, believe it or not, and has a narrower gender gap in salary than in France. Jamaica is ranked ahead of the United Kingdom in terms of countries with up to 30% of employers who are women. And in Jamaica and Barbados, more than 30% of persons self-employed are women. So I don't even want to mention the fact that most of the people here who are in very remarkable posts are also ladies, and not to talk about our hostess, the minister, and, you know, and the number of ladies who are head of mission here is not a coincidence, and actually it is quite a very pleasant situation for us today to be here all together. Evidently, women in the Caribbean have made much more progress in terms of gender equality than some time ago, and however, and this is important, women and girls continue to face various types of discrimination in the workplace and in business. Despite the fact that in many Caribbean countries, women outnumber men by a ratio of 3-to-1, as tertiary level students and graduates, with the exception of the Dominican Republic, though, they still do not earn the same wages as men, and many do not have access to or control over productive resources such as land. So sadly, there is still much ground to cover, but we are working on that, and I'm pretty sure that, you know, we will spare no effort in covering it. To us, the European Union, women's empowerment is a question of human rights. And you know how strong we are in defending our human rights point. You know, this is embarking also in working on democracy and good governance, but also on policy that makes, it is a policy that makes a very good economic sense. Women are now thought to be the 3rd billion after China and India. Can you imagine that? Their purchasing power has been expanding rapidly. They normally control their household budget, we know that very well, and the financial decisions for the family. And by extension, they are a significant pool of consumers and clients. So women, you know, merely from an economic point of view, are important, even for those who don't claim so. The European Union is committed to strengthening women's voice and participation in their own individual advancement, as well as community and national development. And this is at the forefront of our policy in protecting women's rights and women's empowerment. Our approach has been twofold. On the one hand, integrating gender equality considerations in all our policies, legislations, and development programs, and on the other hand, designing and supporting specific gender equality actions such as this one, We Export. Now, gender analysis, for example, is mandatory for all European Union funded programs and projects. And I can tell you it is painful because sometimes to mainstream gender issues in every type of program is not easy, and we do suffer. But for this reason, the delegation I'm heading has recently commissioned country as well as sector-specific gender analysis for the region, for this region. The reports are now being finalized and will be disseminated in an appropriate manner later this year. We are therefore pleased to provide financial support to Caribbean Export today, efforts and all types of efforts to assist the growth and development of female-owned firms in the Caribbean to increase their competitiveness in the local, region, and international market. I must add that since Caribbean Export began collecting gender disaggregated data a little over a decade ago, wasn't it, Pamela? It has been noted that women make up the majority of participants of interventions executed by Caribbean Export with European Union funding. Congratulations. Several women entrepreneurs have so far already benefited from the direct assistance grants. So thank you, Pamela, for your endeavors. Please continue. We look forward to participating in some of the activities and interacting with many of the women who will benefit under this new initiative and program. And most importantly, we see the increased prosperity of their enterprises. We want to see these enterprises grow in terms of increased exports, employment, and income. And we will keep on working on that with our partners here. I really wish you all an enjoyable International Women's Day tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to more of this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I'd now like to invite Senator the Honourable Maxine McLean, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade for the Government of Barbados, to come and give her remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Your Excellency, Daniela Tramacheri, Head of Delegation of the European Union, other members of the Diplomatic Corps, Mrs. Pamela Coke-Hamilton, Executive Director, the Caribbean Export Development Agency, Mrs. Patricia Francis, Chair, the Trade Facilitation Task Force, Government of Jamaica, and today's keynote speaker, Ms. Monica LeBennett, Vice President, Operations, Caribbean Development Bank, Ms. Alison McLean, Representative of UN Women in the Caribbean, officials of the Government of Barbados, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I thank Caribbean Export for the invitation to participate in this launch of Women Empowered Through Export, We Export, and to deliver welcome remarks. To those who might be visiting Barbados, I welcome you and extend a special welcome to Mrs. Patricia Francis. I laud the efforts to facilitate business development, especially through a focus on building export capability. And I must say very quickly that I'm here not only in my capacity of Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, but as someone who has had a long and abiding interest in business development and entrepreneurship. And I say this on this day before International Women's Day. I am even more pleased that we are focusing on women in business. The importance of entrepreneurship and innovation to national development has been recognized by both developed and developing countries. Indeed, we in Barbados have been creating an ecosystem to foster entrepreneurship for several years. And I say this because I am very proud, and I'm sure I'll repeat it again in the speech, that I've been there along many of the steps to build that ecosystem. While in the context of Barbados, women have been taking advantage of all opportunities to get into business or expand existing businesses, there is much that needs to be done to increase the number of women exporting their products and services. The women of Barbados and the Caribbean are but a small percentage of the global female population, which is estimated around 4 billion. But while we are small in number, I believe that this constitutes an opportunity where we can look at export potential, even if we were focusing on exporting to women alone. But of course, that is not the expectation. While my comments may speak more specifically to my knowledge and experience in Barbados, I am sure that there are parallel what occurs in some measure across the Caribbean. And I've had the distinct privilege, as I said before, and indeed honor, to have participated in what has been the evolution of the entrepreneurial ecosystem to which I referred earlier. I say this not to pat myself on the back, but to recognize the rare opportunity I was afforded to help shape a mix of programs which ran the gamut of community outreach, academic education, informal training, financing of business startups, and counseling. I speak of developments in Barbados over the past 25 to 30 years in respect of youth entrepreneurship and small, medium, micro, small, and medium enterprise development. To illustrate, in the case of Barbados, I can cite 4 such initiatives in which I was invited, along with a group of very dedicated Barbadians, to get involved from conceptualization. And these go back from the very early 90s. The Youth in Business Program, the Youth Entrepreneurship Scheme, the Youth Business Trust, the Student Entrepreneurial Empowerment Development, or SEED program, a project that was offered as a core curricular course at the Cave Hill campus of the University of the West Indies, and indeed the introduction of the teaching of entrepreneurship or new venture management, as it was called then. In all cases, women constituted a significant percentage of participants, if not the majority, and we just had that confirmed in the case of programs run by Caribbean Export. Overall, as I reflect on the situation in Barbados, I am confident in saying that there are no legislative or other regulatory constraints facing women in business or seeking to get into business. In fact, women's participation is very evident and contrasts with what obtains in many other jurisdictions. However, where I have been involved in the programs previously mentioned, in most instances, women focused on what I would describe as lifestyle businesses. Put very simply, these are businesses which supplement income or provide little more than a salary or weekly wage. They tend to focus on the local market, infrequently ventured into the export arena. I am very pleased, therefore, that the project We Export, with its plan to deliver around the 4 pillars of access to finance, capacity building, access to markets, and advocacy, will go a long way to empowering women to move outside of their often self-imposed limitations. Today's event illustrates the valuable synergies that can be realized from collaboration. I must stress that the responsibilities for developing an enterprise culture are multiple: public and private, individual and family, and community. Put differently, there are clear roles for the government, the private sector, the community, the family, and the individual. There must be provision of the necessary education and training, the requisite legislative and regulatory framework, the provision of financial resources and access to social capital to provide an adequate and enabling environment. Finally, I must acknowledge the support provided by the European Union in the first instance, and if I could just share a bit of history. Created in 1957 by the Treaty of Rome and launched in 1959, the European Development Fund, as we know it, the EDF, is the EU's main instrument for providing development aid to African, Caribbean, and Pacific, or ACP countries, and to overseas countries and territories. The EDF funds cooperation activities in the fields of economic development, social and human development, as well as regional cooperation and integration. There are also grants for projects aimed to promote an economical, cultural, and social development of the ACP, and to strengthen peace and security, and to provide stable and democratic political environment. And of course, therefore, within the context of this project, EU support is critical. In addition, I must say a heartfelt thanks to the Caribbean Development Bank and the United Nations Women Agency, because they too are playing a very important role in the execution of this project. As I end, let me do what I was asked to do, and that is to welcome you. You, the conceptualizers of the program, those providing financing to make it possible, and those, of course, those who will spread the gospel of We Export, and indeed, you who will be benefiting from this initiative. Again, I say thanks for having me here, and welcome to one and all. As I said before, initiatives such as this are of critical importance to me on a very personal level, because I believe that it is through entrepreneurship and business development that the many aspirations of our women can be realized. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you very much, Senator McLean. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a few prizes, and I wanted to highlight a few of the companies that we have here presenting their products, but I am aware that there are quite a number of female business owners actually in this room as we speak, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So, the first question. Which famous woman said, "Step out of the history that is holding you back. Step into..." And I probably should have said, can I just have a raise of hands? So is that not the right question? Is that too easy? It's too easy, okay. Here's a more difficult question. So if you could just raise your hand, and I'm watching the room to see who raises their hand first, only after I finished asking the question, yeah? Okay. Over what percentage of women in Jamaica are self-employed? Yes, lady in the blue. 30%. Yes, correct. Okay, so that was the first question. So that was information presented by Her Excellency Ambassador Tramachere, so thank you very much for that. Our next speaker, Patricia Francis, is a global leader in trade and development, having headed private sector, government and international organizations involved in international trade and investment. She has championed innovative approaches to successfully engage informal sectors, women, and SMEs in international trade. She has been a member of the Eminent Persons reviewing the future of the British Commonwealth and the African, Caribbean, and Pacific Group's future relationship with Europe. Patricia is currently chair of the Government of Jamaica's Trade Facilitation Task Force and advisor to the Minister of Transport on logistics and trade matters. She sits on the boards of the Jamaica Producers Group, Portland JSX, is a member of the advisory board of IESE Graduate Business School, several family-owned companies, and the UN Women's Audit Advisory Committee. She is also a member of the UK House of Lords All-Parliamentary Group reviewing how Commonwealth countries can trade themselves out of poverty. In 2016, Patricia headed the UN Secretary-General's high-level panel on women's economic empowerment and is the former executive director of the International Trade Center, the joint agency of the United Nations and the World Trade Organization, and was the president of JAMPRO. During her tenure with these organizations, Patricia gained a passion for the development and a wide experience in trade and investment, making her a very sought-after speaker and advisor and leader. In 2006, she was conferred with the Commander of the Order of Civil Merit by the Government of Spain, and in 2015 was conferred with the Order of Distinction in the class of Commander by the Government of Jamaica. Please give a warm welcome to Patricia Francis for her welcome remarks.
I'm going to go for all protocols observed because I think we have distinguished ourselves this morning by addressing all of the very important people that we have here this morning. But I think it would take up too much, I only have 10 minutes, I think, and maybe 2 minutes would be taken up with the protocols. So all protocols observed, and I'm very happy to be here this morning to be with you. And I'm going to touch on a couple of areas which I think are important to the exporting community and which will impact whether you succeed or fail. And I want at first to look at the Caribbean situation. I want to look a bit at some of the recommendations coming out of the high-level panel on women's economic empowerment, touch on sheep traders, and look at post-Brexit and post-Cotonou and how that's going to impact on us. And then, of course, the Caribbean We Export platform. Now, today we are here to celebrate, among other things, International Women's Day, and to bring awareness to some of the challenges and opportunities that we face as women in the Caribbean. On the global stage, the World Economic Forum's 2017 Global Gender Gap Report tells us that gender parity is 200 years away. However, today we recognize the hashtag #MeToo and hashtag Time's Up movement, and there's a strong gender movement which we can jump on that bandwagon. But there is no time to become complacent. And this year, the call to action is the hashtag Press for Progress, as the reality is that we are stagnating in many of the indicators and even going backwards in others, despite all the good news that the EU ambassador brought us. Trade matters for women as it bolsters well-needed growth in the Caribbean and provides better paying jobs for women, since women-owned firms hire more women, especially at the senior level. As someone who believes no good plan is ever written without an understanding of the environment in which the plan is to operate in, I was pleased to see the UN Secretary General's report, The Road to Dignity by 2030, emphasizing that the Sustainable Development Goal targets can only be considered achieved if they have been met by all relevant income and social groups. In response, the CARICOM Gender Equality Indicators framework has been designed to enhance governments' capacity to monitor and assess their progress in meeting gender equality commitments specified in the Beijing Platform for Action, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and of course, among the SDGs. Findings reinforce well-known stereotypes of Caribbean people, but importantly points out that strong education rates for women in the tertiary sector do not seem to translate into strong labor force participation rates. Women remain underrepresented in the labor force and in political representation compared to their male counterparts. Rural women are the poorest and most marginalized. Men are disproportionately represented in the industrial sector and to a lesser extent in agriculture. Women are the majority labor force in the services sector, but data on wage gaps, land ownership credit, and informal employment are not sufficiently robust to support strong analysis. Much work is still needed to be done to document the status of women, but the initiative of We Export is timely and in keeping with the need for women to translate that investment in education into economic power and benefits for their family as we press for progress. I was very pleased in 2016 to set up the UN Secretary General's high-level panel on women's economic empowerment, and believe the outcome documents give direction, great direction for governments and civil society on how to tackle women's economic empowerment. Of critical importance is the need for an enabling environment, particularly in the macroeconomic policy of government, which can leverage women's situation by having adequate budgetary resources and improve economic opportunities which facilitate the creation of decent work. This is not something which most governments pay much attention to, but now that we're doing gender-based budgeting, I think it will be something which we actually will understand a lot more about. The final HLP report identified 7 drivers to achieve transformation. This included tackling adverse norms and promoting positive role models, ensuring legal protection and reforming discriminatory laws and regulations. And Minister, you spoke about making sure that none of these existed here in Barbados, but I can remember when I was first in graduating and getting my first loan from a bank in Jamaica, I was asked to get my husband to sign because, you know, there was a marriage act which said that I was incapable of making decisions for myself and I had to get my husband to sign for me. So those days are gone in Jamaica, so are the days when to get a passport, I also had to get my husband's permission to get a passport for my children. But these are not all the discriminatory laws that exist in many parts of the world, and I think that the IMF and the World Bank have identified in each country what laws exist which are discriminatory. So recognizing, reducing, and redistributing unpaid work and care is another important area. and digital building assets for digital, financial, and property, as well as changing business culture and practices, improving public sector practices in employment and procurement, and strengthening visibility, collective voice, and representation. I could go into some details on that, but in the interest of time, I will talk a little bit more about the advocacy which we need to put in place and the whole issue of leaving no one behind. The CARICOM Gender Equality Indicator Framework has identified the disadvantage that rural women face across the Caribbean. This year, UN Women's CSW, which is to be held in New York, will discuss the plight of rural women. For far too long, rural women and girls' rights, livelihoods, well-being, and resilience have been overlooked or incompletely addressed in laws, policies, budgets, investments, and interventions at all levels across all countries. They lag furthest behind on every gender and development indicator for which data is available. Gender and geographic inequalities mean rural women and girls are disproportionately affected by poverty and inequality, access to land and natural resources, infrastructure and services, and decent work and social protection. They disproportionately experience the effect of environment and climate change. To reverse these trends and eliminate the compounding disadvantage rural women and girls face, renewed commitment is needed by governments and all other stakeholders. Comprehensive policy and program response are urgently needed to reduce and eliminate their disadvantages and ensure realization of their rights. Let us press for progress at CSW 2018. Now, there are a number of programs which have been set up in the Caribbean to address some of the issues which women face. And one is the International Girls in Information Communication Technology Day, which is an initiative of the International Telecommunication Union, which aims to create a global environment that encourages, educates, and empowers girls to pursue science, technology, engineering, mathematics, the STEM subjects, and to launch their ICT careers. The Caribbean's first initiative in 2017, Girls in ICT Day, Caribbean Hackathon, took place in Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad and Tobago. The hackathon provides an empowering hands-on experience in the use of technology to build an innovative product. Girls discover that technology is all about creativity, collaboration, and most importantly, a lot of fun. The 2018 initiative, #SafeGirls, participants will use digital media platforms to solve a high-priority challenge faced by their peer group and produce a groundwork for a regional campaign on disrupting social norms through digital storytelling, to empower female voices for the safety and well-being of women in the Caribbean. And I think most of you might know that Caribbean women face some of the largest percentage of violence against women, although, as Pam says, we have been very quiet about it and not very vocal about it. But I think it's important to find new mechanisms to reach out to communities to change the attitudes of men towards violence against women. So again, we have press for progress. She Traders, which Pam mentioned, is an initiative of my former organization, the ICT, and which seeks to get 1 million women to market by 2020. And they're going to do this through championing quality data, enacting fair policies, securing government contracts, striking business deals, enabling market access, unlocking financial services, granting ownership rights to women who don't have it, and they will provide this through markets which they are going to develop in partnership with eBay, DHL, Barclays Bank, for example. They will provide tools and methodologies as well as good practices to support and connect close to 800,000 women in markets, and also provide access to advocacy through the WTO Trade Impact Working Group. We Export should partner with she traders for greater market access and technical expertise, and again, press for progress. In anticipation of Brexit, the US House of Lords All-Party Group invited a number of us to be part of an inquiry on trading out of poverty. Recommendations to produce will be delivered to heads at CHOGM in 2018. These include a Commonwealth Youth Entrepreneurship Program to highlight the importance of young entrepreneurs in creating jobs and boosting economic growth, encouraging business leaders and enterprises to sign up to the UN Women's 7 Economic Empowerment Principles, develop a Commonwealth Fair and Sustainable Trade Initiative to meet SDG Goal 8 in decent work. So I think there's also ample opportunities for We Export to again join in with the Commonwealth in the various initiatives that they are going to be putting in place. As you heard, I was part of the Eminent Persons Group looking at the ACP's future relationship with the EU. And in looking at where we sit today in a global political arena which is so dynamic, with Brexit, Mr. Trump, Middle East, Korea, Russia, that it has become critical for us to identify those groupings that really share our values and interests over the long term if there is to be any hope of achieving the 2030 agenda and delivering on the SDGs. The far-right political agenda in Europe has been underscored in the recent Italian elections, which may create a new dynamic which forces us to grow closer to other like-minded countries as the future thinking of Europe may be changing. The marginalization of the multilateral process results in a lack of predictability and ultimately has a negative impact on investment, trade, and development. The resulting protectionist behavior of states looking out for their own interests results in developing countries and small island developing states in particular having little opportunity to vent their issues on the global stage. Taking into account the EU priorities and the specific context, as well as building on the basis laid down in the joint EU-Caribbean Strategic Partnership, I feel the following objectives should be at the heart of the renewed political and development partnership with Caribbean countries: peace and human security, democracy, the rule of law, good governance, and human rights. Excuse me. Regional integration, inclusive sustainable growth, trade and job creation, human development, climate change and sustainable management, and natural resources. It's very important, I think, that the Caribbean, it's actually high time that the Caribbean gets together and actually puts our own thoughts as to what it is we want out of this new EU partnership. I'm sorry, I have a bit of a cold. It is within this very complex context that we launch We Export today. There is no doubt that the time has come for the Caribbean to stop being so inward-looking and to recognize that inclusive growth and prosperity will have to come from our own efforts in global and regional markets. No one is going to hand prosperity to us on a platter. We Export will provide the support mechanism to take the companies involved to the next level. I urge participants to know your market and ensure your product is in line with consumers, customers, and business partners' needs. Our history of selling commodities into preferential markets seem to have dulled our understanding of markets, as many of our producers still launch products which are not anchored in market needs, and then we wonder why we are unsuccessful. Work back from your market to your product development and keep in touch with trends and the new forces that are frequent disruptors in the marketplace. Product life cycles are so short today, we need to constantly be on our toes and to ensure we work alongside partners that provide complementary services necessary for our success. Ladies and gentlemen, entrepreneurs, though the journey may seem daunting, we have no choice but to succeed. And I congratulate Caribbean Export, Pam and her team for coming up with this comprehensive initiative, which is designed to take our businesswomen to the next level. Let us press for progress as we seek to grow a prosperous and inclusive Caribbean community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patricia Francis. I think I'm going to take the opportunity to have a little plug, actually, for the agency, because you mentioned that, it's important for entrepreneurs to really make products that the market wants and needs, and to do that research. Caribbean Export actually has a CE intelligence portal, which enables you to do some market research before you embark upon exporting to markets that there may not actually be a market for your product there. So please do go to the website, carib-export.com, go onto the market intelligence portal, do that research. There's officers that can assist you in developing those market pointers to help you along your way in exporting your products. So now I would like to ask the technicians to put up the presentation and invite Pamela Coke-Hamilton to give us the details as it relates to the We Export program.
Thank you very much again. I just wanted to make this point before we begin the presentation. When I was at a women's forum in Brussels last year, it is true that the Caribbean is eons ahead of some other continents. There are women in some African countries who cannot own land, who cannot have bank accounts, who cannot sign anything for they have no rights, literally, economically. And so what does that say with respect to where we are? Yes, we're in a much better place. But I also want to say that because we are per capita, the women who suffer the highest levels of violence against women in the world, it speaks to something else that's going on here that we need to talk about. And it is why, for me, the issue of economic empowerment matters. Because it's one thing to have things written into law. It's one thing to have legislation that says you have the right to do it. But I know many women who are in positions, they work, and they go to work with black eyes every day, and they go to work having been battered the night before, and they don't feel they have an option to leave because he will hold the money for the children. Up to this weekend, we had this conversation. He will hold the money for the children. He will play the economic game. She will not be able to afford to support her kids alone. She will not be able to afford rent. And so the absence of economic empowerment for women, and men, don't worry, I'm not advocating that they leave you. I'm just talking about those situations where there is abject abuse and women do not feel that they have the ability to leave. What we want is to create at least that opportunity that if she wants to get out, she feels that she can. So having said that, let me just start our presentation. I feel very strongly about it because I know too many women in that position. Thank you. Okay, next. We export. It's great, isn't it? It's a great logo. It looks good. And I like the colors. They're my favorite. So We Export is, sorry, am I supposed to do so? Oh, I'm supposed to click it. Oh, sorry. I thought somebody was going to click it for me, you know. It's called empowerment. Okay, thank you. All right, so enhancing the export competitiveness of women-owned firms. That is essentially our mantra. That's what we're trying to do. So the very first objective is to build the capacity of women-owned enterprises, in particular, including internal structural systems. One of the things we've noticed with a lot of women-owned firms is that they're fundamentally basic. As the minister said, they're lifestyle operations. So somebody can bake, they put a thing together and they bake a few cookies or whatever and they sell, which is great. But what happens when they try to upscale? These are the issues that we're trying to get from the basic into the ability to be able to access finance, which continues to be a major problem. So we want them to be able to capitalize on opportunities and to also create the enabling environment for them to be able to do this. We also want to be able to provide specific tools, and among them we have an SME diagnostic tool which will be part of this process, where we will actually provide a diagnostic for your firm. Once we diagnose the issues in your firm and what you need to achieve, we will then start from the very basics and work all the way through the different levels of intervention that we have available through the program. We want to improve your competitiveness, using mechanisms that are innovative and novel. I'm looking at the beautiful products there, and I was thinking that little one with Codair on it, that's branding. That's Barbados branding. Who else says Codair? But no, and it's these kinds of things that you want to begin to you know, eke out and to show that there are opportunities for growth and for expansion. We want to increase market access and penetration for the women entrepreneurs in international markets. And as I move along, we will talk a little bit more about how we're going to do that. And finally, we want to advocate. We're advocates by nature. I think women by nature are advocates. We're always going to war. If it's not for our children, it's for our nephews or for our brothers or somebody. But we're always fighting somebody's battle, and that's how we're made. So our idea is to advance the empowerment of women entrepreneurs and also creating awareness through the business support organizations that are here today. We want to use the business support organizations on the ground to enable us to have as far a reach as possible across the region. So this is kind of outlay of what we want to do. The first thing that we want to do, all companies will complete an online application form, and the diagnostic tool has to be completed as part of that process at the beginning of the project. This will help us identify the areas of strength, the weaknesses, and importantly, the gaps that exist. Some people don't have, as I said, an internal structure. One of the reasons we have had difficulty, for example, in our direct assistance grant scheme is when we give the grants, it's reimbursable. So persons have to get money up front and then reclaim. Many of the companies do not keep proper records. They don't have the financial statements. They don't have anything internally, and as a result, they're not able to get reimbursed, and then that creates financial problems for them. We're trying to avoid that. So what we're trying to do is do a diagnostic first, to just define where you are, what it is you need, what are the gaps, and how do we move forward. We're choosing the BSO organizations from all the CARIFORUM countries who we've invited here today will also be working with us in doing the selection process. The idea is that we would choose 20 women-owned businesses from across the region and work with them for a period of a year. We will not drop them off at the truck stop at the end of that year. But the idea is that they would be graduated, they would have reached a certain point, and then we can start with a new tranche of 20 women. But we would continue to work with them and empower them thereon. And then they can also give back. The project will have a four-pronged approach. 1, access to finance, that's one pillar. 2, capacity building. 3, access to markets, and of course 4, advocacy. The access to markets will also be looking at networking among other producers and become part of the global value chain. We are small, so I may not be able to go the full length in producing a car, but I can produce a radio knob. We need to be at the point where we understand that we're part of a wider global value chain. In this area of digital marketing and in the new arena of the internet and Snapchat and so on, we can create brands that can be produced elsewhere. You don't have to produce everything here. What is it that defines us, and how can we sell that to be part of an insertion into the global value chains? And those are the kinds of things that we want to work on as well. The eligibility criteria. Now, this is the important part. You must be registered and based in a CARIFORUM member state. CARIFORUM is all CARICOM countries plus the Dominican Republic. You must be at least 51% owned by a woman or women. It must be managed daily and controlled by one or more women. Must be in operation for at least 2 years. So certain people had expressed concern about that. The main reason for that is that we want to try to work with those who are already trying to get there. So we're not really working with startups per se, but we want you to at least be in existence for 2 years and have shown some commitment to what you're doing. The business can demonstrate revenue generation. It must have a basic staff structure in place. The product or service is ready to expand in existing or to new markets. Maintains basic business and financial records. In other words, we need to at least know that you're getting and paying something. You know, we will work with you, but we need some basics to start with. I see Donna is laughing, but you know, we know how it goes. And it must have a product or service that has export potential or is already exporting. So those are the eligibility criteria that we are working with. So this is one of the fundamental pillars, and I'd like to just really thank CDB for coming on board with us on this pillar. The access to finance pillar, as you know, it continues to be a challenge for many women. And I know most men in the Caribbean just love to tell us that's not true. Women run everything in the Caribbean, and women, you know, and I hear it all the time. But the truth is, 2-3 years ago, when I walked into a bank to talk about getting a mortgage, I was asked where my husband was. This is not 90s, this is not 60s, Pat, this is 3 years ago. And so it's a problem. There is this, even if it's not written in law, there are certain cultural issues that you continue to face, even if legally it's not allowed. The access to finance. A man can walk into a bank with the same idea as a woman. The likelihood of the man getting it is much higher than the woman getting it. It's just the nature of the beast. So, and I see everybody nodding. It's true, we know it's true, even though the men say it's not true. But that's okay, we'll work on you guys. We'll convert you yet. But Ian, you're a banker, tell us. Sorry, I won't put you on the spot. But the truth is, access to finance continues to be one of the major barriers, particularly for women who don't have traditional collateral. The other issues with our banks we have found is their unwillingness to be creative in terms of what they accept as collateral or as a basis for engaging. And so we're really, really very grateful to the Caribbean Development Bank, who signed an agreement with us, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, for the access to finance pillar. So as part of that, we will have an access to finance workshop, 2-day workshop in May. And the aim is to establish an understanding of how to increase their access to finance, what the requirements are for the financial institutions. And the idea of that also is to include the financial institutions in that workshop. So one, they can explain to us specifically what they're looking for, and two, we can try to work with them to try to see what kind of alternative mechanisms that they would be willing to accept, that they would be willing to look at, and how we can, you know, bridge the gap that exists. At the end of the workshop, the participating MSMEs should have increased the awareness of the credit requirements, and the BSOs should be positioned to assist the MSMEs better access the financing from the financial institutions. So it's a mixture of training, technical assistance. Then we will have CDB will be working with the banks as well to increase their understanding of the financial institutions. This is going to cover proper record keeping, preparation of financial statements, elements of business plan and proposal writing, equity versus debt financing, and common collateral requirements. They will get insight also into how financial institutions make credit and investment decisions. And Caribbean Export, of course, will be inviting the commercial banks, credit unions. Minister, we spoke about credit unions and trying to tap into their large bounty that is sitting there. What we also want to talk about is the common weak areas regarding their ability to provide members access to finance by the BSOs. So CDB will hire a consultant that will provide the BSOs with online training and support through webinars, short e-courses, as well as one-to-one mentoring. Thirdly, we'll have access to grant support. We have allocated funds to be used by the firms to work on the weaknesses identified by the diagnostic tool. They can be used to support gaps in marketing, production, management capacity, and financial management. So an expression of interest will be circulated to the participants in We Export by June, so that companies can prepare their applications to receive financial assistance. And this will be applied to specific technical areas that are most relevant to the firm's needs. And finally, the angel investing sensitization workshop. We'll be having an angel investor workshop in, is it May or June? Sometime in the middle of the year. And the idea is to sensitize the members also to the possibilities on the angel investing. There are several angel investor groups that we've worked in and helped develop over the last 2 years. There's one here, is Trident Angels. There are 2 in Jamaica, Alpha and First Angels. There are 2 in Trinidad, Renaissance and IP Angels. There are 2 in Dominican Republic, in LASIS, and I can't remember the name of the other one. And we're working to develop some within the OECS as well as Bahamas and so on. So that's also another area where we have an opportunity. Okay. We're also looking to hire business coaches who, and there's currently an expression of interest open for business coaches who have the experience for coaching, strengthening SMEs in the specific areas of finance, marketing, Stephanie, I see you there, management, production, that will be identified for this tool. And this is very important, the issue of business coaching. Those of you who've done it, who've succeeded, have been able to get this done, we need you to come on board to help these women to get there. I think mentoring is so critical and it's so lacking in our region, and especially for women. And I think this is an area which I'd really like to see more people come on board. We actually had a gentleman, Ian Hickling, who was one of our winners of the Investor of the Year Awards 2 years ago. And he just wrote and said he'd love to be a business coach and he doesn't want to be paid for it. And I thought, wow, see, a feminist guy is doing something for us. But those are the kinds of persons that we'd like to see get involved. We'll select companies in April, and they will, for a period of 3 months, go through intensive coaching and mentoring. We've also formed a LinkedIn networking group, and which will build the personal networks and for the companies. So we hope that that will also be utilized by, so that's Roberta. This is last year we went to the European Development Days, and this year the focus of European Development Days is women, and it's about women's empowerment. So we have applied for a debate and also a stand, and we want to showcase women-owned businesses in that stand, because what we found, there were a lot of persons interested in Caribbean products, and they have thousands of people going through over the 2 to 3 day period. So that will be in Brussels in June. We will also have a women's forum in the first quarter or second quarter of next year, which we hope will bring together entrepreneurs, business-to-business persons, and high caliber women to talk about it. Finally, on advocacy, we will be launching a We Speak program, and we've discussed this with UN Women, which essentially is a series of podcasts to address the constraints and issues affecting women in business. We'll be calling on several of you to talk about your experience, what you have done, how you've done it, and be available to be interviewed and to speak on these podcasts. We'll also have videos and articles, etc., disseminated. So this is the plug from my M&E person. Monitoring and evaluation is not just something you do to please the donor. Okay, Daniela? We're actually doing it because we like it. So no, we will be actively doing the monitoring and evaluation of this program to ensure that it meets the needs of you, the beneficiaries, but also meets the requirements that we want in terms of the project. And so it's important for us to measure and be able to assess and then decide how to move, when to move. And I think that I'm saying this because we will need your responses. We will need your input. We will need you. One of the biggest challenges we have in the Caribbean is people don't want to give you information. It drives me nuts. We can't measure unless we know. And so we really require you to just give us the information. We're not publishing it. We're not sending it to your competitors. We are not trying to put it on the internet. We just need it to measure impact and to guide our future. So, closing, please apply now. Go to our website. The applications will close on April 6th, which is 1 month from yesterday. So please go on board and apply now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Coke-Hamilton. As you can see, it's quite a robust program, and I do actually have another question in case anybody was listening. So, with a show of hands, name 4 of the priority pillars of the We Export program. Anyone? So, lady in the back there, in the stripy shirt. All 4 of them. Yay! And it's actually also in your brochures if you have right in front of you. Okay. Next on the agenda, I would like to invite one of our partners for the program, our partner on the access to finance side of things, the Caribbean Development Bank, Monica LeBennett. Please come and give your remarks.
Good morning. Like previous speakers, all protocols observed. So I wouldn't go through the protocol list. Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to be part of the launch of We Export. The CDB is pleased to support this important initiative. Just 2 weeks ago, we signed an agreement with Caribbean Export for the access to finance component of We Export, which will benefit women-owned micro, small, and medium enterprises from 10 of our borrowing member countries. We recognize that access to finance is an obstacle too many women-owned MSMEs in our region face, and therefore, ensuring access to finance and business advisory services for women entrepreneurs is essential to unlocking the economic potential in the region. That is one of the reasons that CDB felt it was important for us to invest in this component of We Export. Research commissioned in 2016 by the CDB indicated that women entrepreneurs need to be educated and require dedicated support on how to access the financing available. Among the most common problems associated with access to finance, and Pam spoke about it earlier, include poor record keeping, inability to validate income, lack of written business plans, and inappropriate business structures. That is why, in partnership with Caribbean Export, CDB is seeking to address these issues through a technical assistance and training program for women-owned MSMEs, which it is hoped will expand opportunities for women to contribute to regional economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen, today's launch brings into focus the ongoing work of development partners and stakeholders to ensure gender equality as our region works towards achieving the goals and targets set out in the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Allow me, on the eve of the International Women's Day, to highlight just a few of the interventions CDB is implementing to ensure that no woman is left behind in the development process, and that all women have equal access to education, health care, decent work, and representation in political and economic decision-making. Indeed, gender equality is a cross-cutting theme at the CDB. So in the area of MSC development, over the last 3 years, CDB has assisted more than 1,400 business people, women business people in the MSME sector to improve their competitiveness. Last year, we funded a Women in Music workshop and empowered 200 participants from Jamaica and Barbados to access technology and negotiate and manage contracts and break down barriers to international markets. CDB also recognizes that if women are going to contribute to regional economic growth, they must have access to the right social support and services. Starting in our schools, CDB is investing in sensitization for teachers to challenge gender-based stereotypes and developing a gender socialization curriculum, along with training for early childhood development practitioners. In Grenada, and this is a project that we're really proud of, we are supporting the Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic in providing psychosocial and psychoeducational services to both victims and perpetrators in an effort to combat, prevent, and break the cycle of gender-based violence. We also plan to publish policy briefs arising out of this project, which can be shared and hopefully replicated across the region. Further, in response to the 2017 Atlantic hurricane season, CDB has been supporting psychosocial and social protection and livelihood support interventions that respond to the distinct needs and experiences of men, boys, women, and girls affected by these disasters. Ladies and gentlemen, in concluding, I wish to affirm CDB's support to Caribbean Export and to emphasize the bank's commitment to supporting MSC growth and development in our region. At CDB, we are optimistic that We Export will have a profound impact and not only increase opportunities for women in business, but also support the growth of these businesses. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica LeBennett. We will be having a sign-in shortly, but before we sign the MOU with UN Women, I would like to invite their representative, Alison McLean, to come and give her remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator the Honorable Maxine McLean, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of Barbados, Excellencies, distinguished heads of mission, and other members of the diplomatic corps. Princess Rosebush herself, Miss Pamela, you know that's your name from now on, right? It's gonna stick. Executive Director of Caribbean Export. Ms. Pat Francis, distinguished member and, what can I say, advocate, entrepreneur, and role model for so many of us. Other distinguished members of the audience and female, women, entrepreneurs, business owners, and creatives and cultural entrepreneurs. On behalf of UN Women, I express our utmost delight at being here this morning to join our partners, Caribbean Export, at this milestone event. And I heartily congratulate you, Carib Export, and all your partners on the launch of this very exciting program project, Women Empowered Through Export. One of the things about speaking last, of course, is that, you tend to repeat some of what has already been said. But one of the things that I was so happy to hear about the journey, that we think that this is a one-off event, but this is a journey upon which we have embarked, and it is really an honor and a privilege for me personally, as well as for the organization which I represent, to be here with those who have paved the way and who are now at the cusp of this very exciting time, when we are hopefully going to empower change makers and real leaders in business and entrepreneurship in the Caribbean and beyond. Empowerment, the economic empowerment of women, is one of the main objectives of UN Women and our global mandate. And for that reason, UN Women has developed a Buy from Women enterprise platform for women farmers, a corporate guide to gender-responsive procurement, which can promote a deeper understanding of the barriers and challenges preventing women-owned businesses from accessing and fully participating in local and global value chains. UN Women also engages an open global community for women's economic empowerment on the web portal www.empowerwomen.org. This knowledge gateway provides opportunities for its members to find and share resources and learning tools, connect with peers and experts, and to discuss and generate new ideas and advocate for women's economic empowerment. So we know women and girls are doing extremely well in school, but as you heard already, it's not translating into the labor market. A 2014 IDB report analyzed gender earning gaps in Barbados and Jamaica using a matching comparisons approach. As we know, in both countries, as in most of the Caribbean region, women's educational achievement is higher than that of males. Nonetheless, male earnings surpass those of their female peers. So this IDB report showed that depending on the set of control characteristics, men's earnings surpass those of women's by between 14 and 27% of the average female wages, and between 8 and 17% of average women's wages in Barbados and Jamaica, respectively. In many Caribbean countries, the highest earning gaps are found amongst the lowest income earners. In addition, across the Caribbean, men are more likely to be in the higher wage earning quintiles in the highest two earnings brackets. In Grenada, men represent 76 of the cohort in the highest and 62 of the second highest earners, for example. We know that persistent gender barriers block women's equal and full participation in economic development. In order for women to excel in the economy, we know that they need access to productive assets, to resources, to technology, and to be engaged in decent work and to receive equal compensation. This is not a competition. It is not a zero-sum game. It is about ensuring that women and men are able to reach their full potential in contributing to our economies. UN Women, along with the Global Compact, developed the Women's Empowerment Principles, which offer practical guidance to business and the private sector on how to empower women in the workplace, marketplace, and communities. Private sector companies in Jamaica across several sectors have signed on to the WEPs. And most recently, I had the pleasure just yesterday of being at KPMG Barbados, who signed on to the WEPs. We can no longer afford to restrict women to less secure and lower paying jobs and to block their access to leadership and executive positions. In 2018, if we are to realize economic growth and sustainable development, which our region so badly needs, women have to be seen as legitimate partners and beneficiaries of growth and development. Gender equality is good for business. A 2015 report by the McKinsey Global Institute found that if women and men played, and I quote, an identical role in labor markets, $28 trillion would be added to the global economy by 2025. And these global gains would be on top of the benefits to individual companies. UN Women Multi-Country Office in the Caribbean focuses its programming on partnerships with the private sector and the government to promote education, training, and professional development for women, and to support the implementation of gender-responsive enterprise development, supply chain, and marketing practices. To this end, through this partnership under We Export, UN Women will work with Carib Export in a number of areas, including the development of communications and advocacy strategy to promote an understanding amongst key policymakers, regional institutions, and the general public about the need to increase the opportunities for women-owned businesses, especially in the export arena, in order to achieve sustainable development. We will also work on strengthening the networking amongst women entrepreneurs as they compete for procurement opportunities and build a coalition of support for promoting gender equality in the private sector. Our organizations have many synergies, including our regional mandate, but in particular, our goal of working towards gender equality through enabling women's business leadership, labor force participation, entrepreneurship, economic empowerment, and thus our full and equal participation in society. Let's press for progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison McLean. We're just going to take a few minutes to sign the MOU with UN Women. So if we could invite Pamela Coke-Hamilton to do the sign-in. Okay, so guess what? We've got one more prize left. Now, I'm not sure which one this is left, but okay, so the question is, how far are we in years from reaching gender parity? You can't just shout out. You got to raise your hands. So this lady here had her hand up first, I'm afraid, Lisa. So yes, you can have the prize. So congratulations. Okay, so it's official. The We Export program has been launched. It is live on our website as we speak. Damie has been quite vigilantly responding to all of the comments on the YouTube page where we've been streaming. We've had close to 100 people watching today's proceedings. So I'd like to thank each of you that have come and spoken for us today. Patricia Francis for your keynote address, Senator the Honourable Maxine McLean for her words of encouragement as well. As I say, the program is now open. We are looking for business coaches to also support the program. So if you are a business coach, please do also submit that. Thank you ever so much for your patience at the beginning and your attention throughout the day. Have I finished now? And also, please take the time to have a look at the displays there. As I say, there are some fantastic products. In fact, Barbadiana are actually launching a new line of cushions and gift bags right here in this room, so do take a look at those. Obviously, O's also has some products there for sampling as well, some banana and cassava bread. So please do take the time to have a look over there as well. Thank you ever so much for today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. There are some refreshments outside as well if anybody's thirsty.